Hello and welcome to episode 1212 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, September 1st. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, it's September. How's it going?
Oh man, it's coming down to the wire. Like I am filled with anxiety and joy and sadness. I don't even know how I'm going to contain myself. Yeah, it is the home stretch. We are finally here. Neither of us got a September call up.
I also went unclaimed.
You also went unclaimed according to the sign in the background. Which it's crazy to me that, I mean, I knew Carrasco would probably go unclaimed.
Yeah.
Are you surprised? I was super surprised that Clevenger went unclaimed with the amount of teams that need starting pitching in the playoffs. Like,
yeah, I mean, is it too far to speculate that might just be personality?
I wonder. Like, I know the Giants have said, like, hey, like we are not gonna like take on the contracts of guys that have, you know, domestic violence or any sort of violence in their past. And so maybe there were teams who, like my Giants, for instance, like I felt like Clevenger would be a really good fit from a baseball perspective, but maybe from a real life perspective, they just like, you know what, it's not worth it to us to take on that kind of guy.
That's what I'm wondering is if some teams drew a line there, right? And like every team's line is different. Some teams don't have a line. Like, so I don't know. But if you're not keeping tabs on Clevenger this year, you might be surprised to learn that he's actually throwing pretty well too. Like a month ago this happened, or 2 months ago this happens. It's like, well, he sucks anyway. Who cares? But given the dire need of teams with that need some pitching, you look back since Clevenger got off the IL, 2.31 ERA in 35 innings with 32 Ks and only 2 homers allowed. Like he's pitching well, and so you would have thought that a team would be interested, but does not have a good reputation anymore. Obviously has the off the field domestic violence situation that was said to have found no wrongdoing, right? So let's put that out there. That's what came of it. Not it's done. You're not waiting on any finality there. It is done. But also, you know, got in trouble during the COVID season for being a bit of an idiot. He and Zach Pfaadt running around putting their immunocompromised, cancer-surviving manager, Tito Francona, into some risk. So I wonder if there was just a knucklehead meter that went too high, and that's why Clev didn't get scooped.
I mean, the Rays are starting Knee tomorrow as an option. Ben Lively is starting today for the Reds.
I can't believe they didn't get any pitching. And we're going to talk about what they did get because we have to talk about Waiverpolooza.
Clevenger was the only guy available to them. Because
because Cleveland's
the Guardians
that's right,
grabbed everybody.
That's right.
I don't know if you saw my tweet, but I was all like, oh man, the Guardians grabbed all the Angels guys to not make the playoffs, just like the Angels.
Like the Angels, the Guardian Angels, by the way. I saw people saying that about them. I like that.
Yeah, I like that.
They might make the playoffs, though, Justin. So let's talk about what they did. They scooped Lucas Gioloito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Matt Moore off of this Waiverpolooza. Now, the Guardians frustrate me because, you know, when they were selling a bit at the deadline, that, you know, obviously that amount, Ahmed Rosario for Thor deal, that's a sell. Because even if you got no major thoughts about Ahmed Rosario, he's very clearly better than Thor. They just took contract for contract. We'll give Thor a little shot if we can work magic with him. No, failed, done. And I can't remember if they did anything. Oh, they also traded Josh Bell. And so they were selling, which was stupid. That made no sense to me because they were in the mix. So now they wait a month. I think they're actually in a worse position, but they wake up and they're like, oh, I guess we're still 5 games out. So, okay, sure. We'll take all these free guys, free in terms of giving up assets, not free to them in terms of paying the rest of their contracts, but that's only a month of contracts. Do you think, obviously you made the joke that they're not going to make the playoffs, but what do you think are their real chances with Giolito, ReyLo, and Matt Moore coming to Cleveland that they actually make a surge here? 5 games is not anything against a division rival too, especially if they have games against them, which I'm going to check if they do while you're talking.
They got one series, I think.
Okay, so you're already on it.
Coming up.
That series could flip it, right? You sweep that series, that doesn't make up the whole deficit, but that makes up a big portion of it in one fell swoop. So the 5 games to me is quite literally nothing. So from that standpoint, jokes aside, how likely is it that Cleveland does chase down Minnesota for you?
Well, if you believe in the Fangraphs odds, they say 5% chance that Cleveland makes the playoffs. So
I do not believe that it's only 5%.
And I don't know if that's been updated, now with the roster additions or not. So I don't know exactly.
If they're not officially on yet, maybe that's part of it.
I can't remember who tweeted this, and so I'm sorry I'm not giving credit, because we're all about giving credit here at the Sleep on the Bus podcast.
Absolutely.
But someone yesterday tweeted out that the Twins have the easiest strength of schedule left in the major leagues.
Wow.
And so while I understand why, and looking at their schedule, so they've got a series right here against at Texas, obviously difficult, and then they have that 3-game set at Cleveland, which just became a little bit more difficult with their additions.
No doubt.
But after that, they've got the Mets, they've got the Rays, they're at the White Sox, at Cincinnati, the Angels, the A's, and they finish against the Rockies. So like,
that's nice.
I mean, their last.
Where does Cleveland's rank though? Because they've got Tampa Bay this weekend, then the Minnesota series, but then a trip to LA to face the Angels with the Angels players, 4 games against them, 3 against your boys in San Francisco, which won't be easy, but is winnable. Then they do get Texas. So the San Francisco, Texas, that's a little tough, but then a trip to KC, home to Baltimore, home to Cincy, and at Detroit. So I think that's pretty easy too.
Close.
Yeah, it's not easier. I do think Minnesota's was easier, but I think Cleveland's lineup or schedule's pretty beatable too.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, I think I think it's closer to like a 20% chance, maybe a 25% chance that Cleveland could catch and pass. And I don't know who's got the tiebreakers, because we no longer have the game 163. So
correct.
That could
season series. I'll check that.
But I don't know. Minnesota, I think, is just a better overall team.
Cleveland has it right now. They're 6-4 against them with the 3 games pending.
So yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland, I think Minnesota's the better team. And so I'm going to bet on Minnesota overall. But you know what? As much crap as we give Cleveland's ownership, little kudos to them, right? Like, they're willing to say, like, hey, yeah, we'll take on this money.
Yeah.
Since we don't have to give up prospects and stuff like that, and we can block the other teams from getting these guys. I wondered if there was going to be a team like this that just said, give us all the guys. Just give us all the guys. Like,
and I wish it would have been a team a little bit more in it than Cleveland, right? Like, if I wish they'd have gotten to Cincinnati and Minnesota, or Cincinnati and Miami, because I think those are the 2 teams that really could have benefited. Give Miami the hitters and Cincinnati the pitchers. Though I will say, I did understand Cincinnati's pickups once I dug into it a bit more, because originally I was like, what are they getting outfielders for? We'll talk about that in a moment.
That burns a little bit.
Yeah. Let's talk about Gioloito real quick before we jump into what Cincinnati did. What do you think of Gioloito now moving again? And, I have Gioloito on my main team. I haven't played him much as an Angel because he's had a lot of tough matchups. I sat him for the first one. I was like, let him get one under his belt type of deal. It's been a bit up and down. And now here he is moving clear back across the country, back into the middle of the country where he was. He was in Chicago. Now he's coming back to Ohio to be with Cleveland. What do you think of Gioloito now down the stretch? Is this a better move for him? Is this neutral? Do you put anything into being traded or being moved twice as any sort of issue? Where are you at on Gioloito, who's kind of been a bit wobbly of late too?
So I'm taking a look at the park factors real quick.
Got to be a little bit better, right? Though Cleveland's sneaky D's for hitting.
No, Cleveland has got the kind of best park factors for a pitcher this year.
Okay, I'm wrong on that then.
If you don't use the 3-game rolling or 3-season rolling average.
Okay, so this year only, which can't be noisy.
They're number 32 and number 32 in home runs allowed.
Okay.
So that means that's good for a pitcher as opposed to bad for one. The Angels have been where are they? Oh, the Angels have been the 7th worst park for pitching pitchers giving up home runs this year.
Tough spot.
So,
Tough spot to pitch.
And pretty neutral overall.
Okay.
So this is an upgrade for Giolito, which I'm all for. I don't have Giolito anywhere, but you know, like it's been such a weird couple seasons with him, where he went from being one of the best pitchers in baseball to a guy who, for a lack of a better word, has just been hittable. Like he just he's not get the movement that he was getting previously, and I think there's also, it feels like, some sequencing issues as well. Like he just isn't trusting certain pitches in certain spots, which makes him more predictable. So, you know, Cleveland's a really good organization in terms of, you know, getting the most out of their pitchers. So I think it's a pretty good landing spot for him. Pretty bad one for Matt Moore and Reynaldo Lopez, because there's no way they're factoring into the 9th inning.
True.
So from a fantasy perspective, but from a real life perspective, it's great for Cleveland's bullpen.
Huge reinforcements to the bridge to Class A. Like, wow. Not that they even necessarily need that, but it's just the depth of it, and it really, really helps them. And you know what I really like about it with ReyLo and Moore, in terms of that volume, is because right now they're leaning on 3 rookies. Bobby Allen and Gavin Williams. We're going to talk about Gavin Williams later in the 2 steps. He left his last start after just 1 inning with leg soreness. He might have been hit by a comeback. I actually don't remember.
It was a hamstring strain.
Okay, so hamstring strain there for Gavin Williams. So they're relying on 3 young guys right now. Xavier Curry's been pitching in the starting rotation, trying to do the best he can. So if they get more 4-5 inning outings, they're not being hurt as much, because they did have a good bridge before this, but obviously that bridge is strengthened, and now you don't have to go as much on those starters. So they played it brilliantly. Again, I still don't understand why they ever sold. That was stupid, but they remedied that here with these 3 moves. I do like them, and I agree Giolito goes up by moving back to Cleveland here. Let's talk what the Reds did. Hunter Renfroe and Harrison Bader. Bader waived, obviously, by the Yankees, and Renfroe also part of the Angels waiving. And again, when I first thought about this, I was like, outfielder. Cincinnati got outfielders for days. Thinking about, you know, all the guys that are 2 faves, for Friedel and Fraley. Obviously, I knew Fraley was compromised, and he's not even back yet, but he is working his way back. But then I looked at it, and I was like, actually, no, this makes sense. First off, your boy Friedel runs into the wall literally every day.
All the time.
Every single game I watch of them, he has a and they're always terrifying. I always message you like, oh my God, he's dead. Because it looks so bad in the moment. I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm like, oh my God, Friedel, because he comes up and he looks so hurt. And then he's like, I'm good. And he stays in him. Okay. So he's a boss. Like, good on him. He's a G. But
he is like a toddler that has just learned how to walk, because he runs into fucking everything, falls over. You're like, oh my God, he's dead. And then he pops back up. Like, I'm fine.
He giggles and he's fine. Exactly. And so it's like, okay, so maybe they're, you know, protecting it a little bit there. You think about Fraley, he's going to be compromised. And so he's only going to be playing against righties, not going to be running. So there's some interest there. You look at somebody like Will Benson, is a rookie, probably needs to be platooned as well. And they got 2 righties here. So when I looked up, I was like, you know what? This makes a lot more sense than I thought. Bringing in 2 righties, Bader and Renfroe, to basically play for Friedel and Benson against left-handers and spell them. You can also bring in Bader as a defensive replacement. You get Friedel, Bailey, or Bader, and, you know, Benson or Renfroe out there. That's a pretty good outfield.
So that's the thing. So I wish I could give credit, because I want to give credit, but I saw someone say that Cincinnati had the 28th worst outfield defense this season, and both Renfroe and Bader are really good defenders in the outfield. So I think that really is one of the reasons why they've added both these guys. You know, obviously, and they could for free. Like, all they had to do is pay the rest.
Pay the money.
Pay the money. And so it makes a lot of sense when you think about it from that perspective. From a fantasy perspective, this was already a situation that was already muddy. Like, it was like, I think it's gonna hurt. A number of guys, and it's just hard to predict. Hey, who's it gonna hurt the most?
Exactly. And I'm going to challenge you with that question a bit. So let's focus on Renfroe, who's going to have some availability in some of the shallower formats. He's 55% rostered at Yahoo. He's first base outfield there too, so at least it's a secondary avenue to get in. I guess he touched first base one time. And so,
well, when they didn't have Jared Walsh, he actually had to,
that's right.
They had to play him at first. So.
Hey, good on him getting. Did he play 20 games there? Is he going to have first base next year? I don't remember.
I will find out.
Are you picking Renfroe up anywhere, or is the playing, because Cincinnati's a great place to hit too, or is the playing time too fractured for you to go for Renfroe in a 12 or 10, which is where he's mostly available? Because in 15s he's already locked and loaded.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's available, I don't mind picking him up. Let's see, he has played just 5 games.
Okay, so only in leagues that would have a very low threshold. Yeah, so 19 homers, 242 average for Renfroe this year. He's doing Renfroe-ian things, right? He's a little bit off of his last 2 years in terms of OPS plus, down at 97, but you're getting your pop. He's been okay, if a little bit disappointing. Cincinnati's great to play, but it's just like, I don't know what kind of PT I'm getting for a 12-teamer.
And he may be the only guy, I think, out of that whole Cincinnati outfield that plays full time.
I could see it. I could see it.
I don't think he's a short side platoon guy. I think he's gonna play full time, and it is the best park to hit in baseball for power. So I mean, it's an upgrade even over the Angels, which is like the 7th best place to hit for power this year. So and I think I'm gonna if he was available in one of my leagues, I think I would pick him up just on. I mean, Cincinnati, if you're hitting 6th or 7th in that lineup, that's still pretty darn.
How about 4?
You think he's gonna hit 4th?
He's hitting 4 today. So they have a lefty. So we get an indication today. By the way, kudos to the Reds for having the lineup out at 9 a.m. Central here.
Well, they have a doubleheader.
Oh, okay. There you go. So
they play their first game at like 10 o'clock in the morning, West Coast.
That makes sense then. The first game's against a lefty here. And you can see that Friedel and Benson are out for the 2 new guys, batting 1 and 4. Bader 1,
which makes all sense.
Absolutely.
Second game of the doubleheader is against a righty, so you say, okay, you guys are out this game. We're gonna put the right-handed bats in, and then next game.
If Renfroe plays both, though,
that's a really good sign.
And I think he could, because Nick Martini's playing DH lately.
Is he DHing this game?
No. He's a lefty, so he's out. So I do wonder if he would be the lefty that maybe says. Now, in fairness, he's been cooking. It's 9 games, so it's nothing. But he has great plate skills and a 150 WRC plus. So, in that small sample, Nick Martini's been holding his own. But I wonder if he might get hit. You bring in Benson and Friedel, but you keep Renfroe in by taking out Martini. We'll see. Obviously, by the time this is out and people are listening to it, they'll have seen the second game and they'll know what's going on. But I think if Renfroe plays both, then you're right that there's a good chance that he plays daily. And then I agree with you. He becomes viable in 10s and 12s with his power. So what about Bader? He's available in more, even some of the shallower formats. And he's a guy I've loved in the past. The injuries, he just cannot avoid them. You talk about Friedel running into everything and getting hurt and doing all that.
What a platoon pairing. Only one of them will survive the end of the season.
It's like a Thunderdome here in center field. Like 7 homers.
This is the Highlander. There can only be one.
There can only be one. 7 homers, 17 steals in about a half season. He had 5 homers and 17 steals in about a half season last year, right? So he's a power speed guy, but you just don't get enough playing time, and he's only hitting 240 this year. He just cannot stay healthy, but he's healthy right now, and he's playing for Cincinnati. Are you looking at Bader in 15-teamers at all?
I don't think so. I mean, playing time is king right now. Like, the only way you're going to move standings is by having guys who are in the lineup. If something were to happen to Friedel, or if we start seeing Bader like pick up more playing time, because of his defense, and he is a very good defensive player, like, then yes, I would be interested, especially in that park. Like, it's just such a great place for a guy like him to hit. But I think he's going to be a defensive replacement, a short side platoon guy. And unless we see him start, against righties on a fairly regular basis. So the next week will be something like I'm really watching.
Yeah, because it's all righties for Cincinnati next week. One lefty on Sunday. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be watching the lineups and seeing how often he's in. So maybe like in a deeper league, you put in a claim and you put him on your bench or something like that. But I think most leagues, you can't be relying upon a guy who's only going to play 2 or 3 times a week.
Yep, I'm with that, and I say that as probably one of the bigger Bader believers. I like the guy, but I'm just not sure that the PT is there. I am surprised to learn that he's 100% rostered at the main event. My man hasn't hit a home run since week 15. It's week 23 for those that don't know the weeks. Yeah, the steals are there 1 1 1 3 0 2 1 in the last several weeks. So I guess that's the main reason he's being rostered, but I'm not sure that's enough to be 100%. And I doubt he's going to get cut a bunch because people are going to keep the Cincy factor. I think will keep him on people's benches.
He's hitting 208 versus right-handed pitching this year.
It's a nightmare. And so he's going to be short side. Yeah. So Bader's going to be short side. Renfroe has a chance to be full side or full platoon playing against everybody. And that would be huge for him. He could feasibly hit like 8 to 10 homers down the stretch. Josh Donaldson to Milwaukee on a minor league deal. Any interest here?
No. I honestly, when he got, released from the Yankees, I was all like, I think this is the end of his career.
Just quit.
Yeah, I think it's over. So I was honestly really surprised when I saw that the Brewers signed him a minor league deal. It makes sense. Like they don't have to pay him anything, right? Like,
take a shot. I mean, if they think there's anything in the bat, I get it. I just don't happen to think that there's anything in the bat. So you mentioned Carrasco didn't get picked up. Neither did Mike Clevinger. Neither did Randall Grichuk. Should Randall Grichuk feel offended a bit? Because
absolutely, I mean
everyone else got pulled from exile there, and they kept him there. Guys, what about me? Hey, Skip, did anybody claim me? No, Randall, please stop. Randall, I will come to you if someone signs you. Please stop asking me, bro. You're really pissing me off. Nobody picked you up.
This feels like the kind of motif of his career, like that. Like nobody really wants Randall Grichuk, and I mean, like you remember when like Toronto was trying to trade him, and like they could not find a partner for the longest time to just take him. Like we won't even give like, and I mean I know part of it is like it's just production versus the contract. Like, do you want to pay a guy as much as you've got to pay him for the last month of the season, considering like he has not been extremely productive? But
true.
There are a lot of teams running out the Nick Martinis of the world right now.
And
like
you're making 9.3 mil. So divided by 6, it's 1.6, 1.55. Like, come on, even the poor teams can afford that if they thought he was worth it. How much do you think the 47 WRC plus with LA is influencing that? It was 117 with Colorado. So he's a 96 for the year, which isn't too bad. It's actually his best year since 2020 for Grichuk, which of course isn't even a real year. So if you cycle back further, it's his best year since 2018. But how much do you think that the recent awful production hurt Grichuk, and the fact that he's not a glove, right? Like Bader's a worse bat by a lot, but he's an elite center field defender. So I think Grichuk doesn't really bring anything, I guess, right? He's short side platoon.
He did go 4-3 with a home run the day they put him on waivers.
He said, "Oh
like,
yeah,
he's like, hey,
you guys,
claim me. Like
I got something,
right? Like claim me." Of course, so then it went 1 for 5 the next day, but
still a hit.
Yeah, I mean, this is I mean, I've always liked Grichuk. Like I just and he obviously I kind of got bailed out this year in terms of like where I was willing to draft him because got injured right at the end of spring training. So
I liked him in Colorado too, by the way. This year I was like, free and clear, just off the radar.
Yeah.
Could be fine. And he was fine when he played, but he only played 263 plate appearances.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably. I mean, I'm sure he'll find a home as like a bench bat next year.
Yeah,
he's 32, so like he's not like super old, but he's also
his career's not done. But he'll bounce around.
He could be. Yeah, he's gonna be a journeyman rest of the way.
Is he gonna turn up somewhere, a la Cole Calhoun being the first baseman for Cleveland, and like in 2 or 3 years we're gonna be like Randall Grichuk is in Miami as their, playing first base DH. Like I think he's gonna be a guy like that who bounces around,
like
and
Corey
then he's gonna be randomly. Yeah, Corey Dickerson, Cole Calhoun, Randall Grichuk's going to be joining that group here with this because he's a free agent after this. He's not going to get another long-term deal, and he'll just be bouncing around. And hey, if he makes another 3-4 years out of it, that's great because he's been in the league for a decade. He's put together a nice career as a first-round pick. So we're not here to besmirch the name of Randall Grichuk. I feel a little bit bad for him that he did not get scooped. All right, let's move on to the September calls because we already know a bunch of interesting ones here, and I'm curious how you feel about these guys coming into the bids this weekend. But let's start with probably the biggest one. I'm not sure that anybody could necessarily top this either. Maybe there's a couple prospects that could be called up, but Jasson Dominguez is coming up for the Yankees, the Martian. He had massive expectations immediately, and I feel like it's been a little bit quiet. Like he didn't exactly run the minor leagues, but he was very good, right? He never really had a bad year in the minors. But remember, he's supposed to be like, the next Trout and all of this. Can't miss, greatest prospect. He's 34th ranked on our list this year. He doesn't get a ton of chatter these days. Is Jasson Dominguez almost underrated at this point? By the way, 15 homers, 37 steals at AA. He only had 9 games at AAA. It was 0 homers, 3 steals in that limited time. But is he a little bit under the radar right now, Jasson Dominguez, relative to the initial hype?
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably is, but I think it's for a reason.
Okay.
He's just, you have to remember, like, when guys like this, like, they get drafted or not get drafted, but they get signed to like these big international deals. We get these huge expectations, and like the Kevin Maitons of the world, right? Like, you pick this guy up when he's 16 or whatever, and you're like, oh, the ceiling is just through the roof, and you're projecting a guy who's 16, right? Like, and unfortunately for those guys, like that shit follows them. Like, right? Like anytime,
for sure.
Anytime we're going to talk about international buzz, we're going to talk about Kevin Maiton. And Dominguez, I think, has been unfairly had this label of like he's got to be an elite prospect. Like he's a really like strong, muscular guy. Do you know how tall he is?
He's pretty short, right? Because I think he's listed at like 5'10", which means he's probably 5'7".
He's listed at 5'9".
Okay, if he's listed 5'9", he's as tall as Altuve.
Yeah.
Like, so because if you were really 5'9", you're going to list 5'11". We've talked about this science before. And if you're really 5'11", you would list at 6'1".
Every guy who's ever been on a dating app knows what we're talking about.
Exactly. And
I've never been on a dating app because I started dating Danielle before dating apps were a thing.
But I'm fortunate. That is the one trait that I have. I could literally just.
I would totally be putting 6'2" on my dating app if I had one. Like,
it's so easy out there for tall guys. Obviously, I'm not on a dating app. I've been with Jen for 5 years. But if I were, I could just list my height and be done with it. I would get some matches.
But the problem is no one would believe you.
Well, they would eventually learn that when I show up as the inflatable man outside in front of a used car salesman, they'd be like, "Oh, you are really that tall, cool, but you're annoying as shit. You stop talking about baseball." And I'd be like, "No, I can't do it." But Jasson Dominguez, I did not realize he was that short.
Yeah,
and that's not. So why was he being called the Zion Williamson of baseball when he was first signed? I think just due to his musculature.
Yeah, I think people just looked at he was young when he signed, right? So like,
true.
Hey, maybe he's still growing.
Maybe it's a growth spur.
Yeah, no.
Well, here's the thing with Dominguez. He's never been bad.
No,
but he hasn't lived up to the crazy hype.
Because you look at how muscular he is, and you go, "Oh, this guy's gonna hit bombs forever." And it's the power that's never like fully developed in game. I think there's a lot.
Don't say never. Don't say never on anything. He's 20.
Well, sorry. As of now, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I just want to be clear that like he's still just 20, Jasson Dominguez. Yeah. And so that's where I'm getting the underrated aspect here. Despite being a Yankee, with all the hype and the lack of like flashy prospect rankings or anything, I'm thinking maybe he's a little bit underrated right now.
I mean, I'm getting an eerie feeling of Yandy Diaz here.
Really? He doesn't lift? Is there a lift? I mean, he lifts weights, but he doesn't lift the ball?
He does not have a stop in the minor leagues where he's had a fly ball percentage at 40% or higher.
Oh, okay. That
mostly a 45 to 50% ground ball guy. And what have we talked about with Yandy Diaz for a really long time, right? Is some of these really muscular guys don't have very good flexibility, right? If you've ever walked around like a public gym with like weightlifters or bodybuilders, and you see these guys walking around with their arms kind of bent, like they're flexing all the time, they're not actually, a lot of them aren't actually like doing that purposefully. It's that they have worked out their biceps to such a degree without, doing proper stretching, that there are the tendons in their biceps actually shorten, right? So, and this is, I used to power lift, so like I know what I'm talking about here.
And this is why I stopped powerlift. I didn't want that. Like I was headed toward that, obviously, right? I was straight line toward being like a guy that's too young. So I dialed it back. Yeah. And I think that was like discipline on my part.
So, and I'm not saying that like, I've only seen Jasson Dominguez play, Arizona Fall League. And on TV, and kind of limited. So I'm not saying like this is him. He's one of these guys necessarily, but you're talking about a guy who's extremely muscular, who's kind of a smaller guy and can't seem to lift the ball. That tells me like, okay, maybe the raw power is something that he's going to have a lot of trouble unlocking at the major league level. And so while I still think, on the plus side, he's stolen a lot of bases. He's stolen 30 something bases this year.
So with all the ground balls and striking the ball well, maybe Jasson Dominguez is like a singles guy, but then he's stealing a bunch. So maybe if we aren't seeing the lift or the homers in this sample, but you need steals, maybe he's your guy in that front for Jasson Dominguez, because he does strike the ball well. One thing we do see with Yandy and guys like that is like their batting averages are good because they beat the shit out of the ball. And when it's in the ground, it's still tough to play. And for Yandy, he's got the turf to kind of help it even be tougher to play. So maybe that's the avenue there for Jasson Dominguez. You pick him up more for speed than power. And if you get any homers thrown in because they teach him a little bit of lift here down the stretch, that's gravy. But I think I would pick him up with the idea of maybe getting some decent average and a handful of steals down the stretch.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to how much does he strike out. He does walk a bunch. He's a double-digit walk rates all throughout the minor leagues. And so we know he can get on base. We know he can steal some bases. And, the power, well, I don't think the power is prodigious. He is a switch hitter in Yankee Stadium. So, lefties have that short porch. So maybe he doesn't need to lift it that much because it just, he can get it high enough to get over that short porch, when he's up against the righties. So, I think he's obviously going to be the big name in Pfaadt this weekend. And I am definitely going to put a $1 bid on him and hope that no one else bids because I have no Pfaadt money.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people are poor too. Some they might not be able to push too hard on Jasson
I might
Dominguez.
be able to, if I really need him in a league, maybe I'll put $2 on him.
Maybe go all the way up to $2. But there won't be a ton of money spent going for Jasson Dominguez for you because you are a poorman. I'm a bit of a poorman myself, although my $29 sits firmly like in the upper half of our money in our league. It's crazy. And our two competitors, our top two guys there battling back and forth, Rob DiPietro, John Posma, two industry titans. They have 28 and $17 respectively. Yeah. And so there's not. I got 29. I'm a rich man. So let's talk.
Can we give a shout out real quick to I don't think he's ever been on the podcast, so I don't know that I'm allowed to call him friend of the podcast, but friend in real life, Brian Slack.
Oh yeah, our friend. Yeah. I don't know. We should remedy that, by the way. But yes, he's our actual friend who we hang out with at.
I'm gonna be hanging out with him at the last day of the season last year. Me, Toby, Sammy Reed, and Brian Slack got together and watched all the last games of the season. We're going to do it again this year. I think Bubba Hendricks is going to join us. And so he's first place in the main event overall right now. So big shout out to Brian Slack. Rooting for you. I'm not saying anything bad about any other competitors.
Nope.
In the top 10. I know your buddy
Greg Martin sitting in 6th. That's where I'm rooting for Greg. I love Brian. I respect him. John Posma. Not the team that I mentioned, but his other team is in 2nd right there. Clark Olson, I'm familiar with him. Phil Dussault, the robot there is in 11th, so he's lurking too. Like a lot of great people. But yeah, my allegiances lie
Rob
with my buddy Greg,
who teams up with Ian Kahn and
with our boy Ian.
Ian's not in the industry. Ian's not in the industry anymore. Still one of the greatest players in fantasy baseball.
He's just one of the best players. Like, if he just, Ian Kahn, so good. He and Robert Mershak in the same spot that they were last year, around this area here in the top 20, just kind of lurking. I see Steve Weimer there. Like, we see a lot of the studs. By the way, Clark Olson, 3-19. I'm always so impressed when people got like 2 teams up there that high. That's just so damn impressive, especially when the teams are like different. It's not like they got the same core guys, but I am not surprised. And it didn't have to be this way, but it fits. It's nice that Brian Slack, being the number 1 guy, has Mookie Betts.
And
because holy shit.
Shout out to our good friend, again, a guy who hasn't been on the pod, I don't think yet, but good friend of ours, Steve Potts. He is 69th overall.
Very nice. So he's in the nicest spot. There should be a little prize for that.
He's first overall in the auction championship. So,
and you're chasing him there, yes?
Yeah, I've had a pretty bad week, so I'm no longer. I'm 11th in the overall, so I'm still able. Like, if I have a hot September, like, I could still theoretically catch Dave. But
Greg was doing well there too. He's fallen to 20th. So you're 11th. Greg's 20th. Toby Batflip Crazy at 19th there in the auction championship. Our colleague Jeff Zimmerman at 16th there. So yeah, a lot of friends. As we've been in this NFBC world more, we become friends with more and more people. So it's like easy to have like our friend here, our friend there. But yeah, Brian Slack right now in first. That day that you guys hang out could be one of the most nerve-wracking days if he is still indeed chasing the top spot. So it's going to be a great September. And I wanted to mention that he has Betts right now because, Betts is single-handedly carrying some teams up the standings. I'm certain of it. There's just no way he's not. Obviously, to be number 1 overall in the main event, you got to have more than just one guy. But having somebody like Betts who's just putting up something every night has to be so helpful.
Acuna, with his historic season, obviously, I think he is the clear 1-1 next year.
Yep.
But with Ohtani's injury to his UCL, Betts is the clearer second pick, right? He's going to be short second.
That part is massive,
I believe.
And
he may actually not have shortstop because they made the trade for.
He got 16 there, so depending on your league, in NFBC it will not. But it'll be outfield second. Yeah. I don't see 4 more games for him this year at short for Mookie. I agree.
I don't think he's played there since like the beginning of July.
Exactly. Now 38-10 with 317 average, 10 steals, 98 ribs. 116 runs with a month to go. He led the NL with 117 last year, Justin, and he's got a month to add to the 116 that Mookie has right now. I'm with you. I've always been on the Mookie train. I felt like he's been a bargain the last couple of years at the back end of drafts. He was instrumental the year I won my main event. I absolutely adore Mookie. And I'm actually a little bit bummed that he's going to be a little expensive next year. He's been moving up to the top of the first round, but it is absolutely merited. I do think Ohtani's still right there. And if you take him at 2, I have no beef with that, even as a hitter only, because he's still 50-20?
Yeah.
So like, the pitching aspect is nice, but I really don't think that not pitching all next year, if that's the case with Ohtani, I don't really think that that's
first big year on a new contract. That's the
depends
on where he ends up.
Where he goes. If he stays with LA, it's not the same factor of a new deal. And now we don't think he's going to stay there.
That's where I think he's going.
If he goes to the Dodgers, I do have the first year thing. Like, I would probably lean off a bit. It's not foolproof that it happens all the time. And if you're still taking Ohtani, I totally get it. But we're still taking Trey Turner. Now, is Trey Turner going to do enough here down the stretch? He's been electric here in August to kind of like make people forget the fact that he only has a 103 OPS plus this year. Because before his run, I couldn't wait to take Trey Turner at the back end. He and Betts were basically going to be flipping draft spots. But now that Turner's going off, I think he's going to put himself back in the early part of the draft.
I don't know that he's going to. Then
I'll take him. I'll gladly take him. I think it's
going to be a back end first rounder. I think
I'll have Turner everywhere then.
Rob DiPietro did like the first 7 rounds of a draft with a bunch of people.
Yeah. Where are the results of that?
He had tweeted out, but Turner was in the second round. And it was the beginning of the second round, so it was like 17th, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I do think he is going to be a first round guy. But the nice thing about all the people, a lot of industry friends, Bloomfield, Jenny Butler was in it. I think Bubba was in it. The really nice thing about it is it was really indicative of what we're going to see from NFBC drafts later in the season, right?
Yeah.
There were 3 starting pitchers in the first round, which is not something we normally
Strider,
see
Cole,
early.
and
I can't remember maybe it was Burns. I can't remember, or maybe Gallen. I can't remember.
Okay.
So I think Turner is definitely a first rounder, but I think he's the back end because with stolen bases going up as much, I think people are really going to prioritize power in that first round. And you want a guy who's going to hit 25 plus. And so I think guys like, Corbin Carroll, Julio Rodriguez, Bobby Witt, I think they're all going to go in front of a guy. And I think even maybe a guy like Freddie Freeman going to go above a guy like Trey Turner. So I think next year is going to be a really great spot to be kind of drafting in the back end of the draft, because you're going to be able to start your draft with like Trey Turner and a pitcher, or, Trey Turner in, I don't know, like Jose Ramirez, like who's been nuts.
I'm all over it, dude. Like I think it's complete first year adjustment to being the man for Turner. Like I think he fits this thing that we talk about, and shouts to Glenn Colton, Glenn Colton and Rick Wolf on that, because that's a big part of their smart system. But like, I just think that's what it was. And in fact, the turnaround, because Philly learned, hey man, booing our guys when they struggle, that doesn't really work. I know that's a New York thing. They get so horny to boo their own players. Sometimes you just try to pull a guy out and you actually support him, and that works too. And so they did a whole thing where they said, let's give him a standing O. He's busting his ass. Things aren't working right now for him. Let's let him know we believe in him, because he's going to be with us for another decade. And boom, what happens? He goes crazy. Turner does. And
while I don't usually love those kind of narrative type things, he literally took out billboards around the city,
thanking them
for it, because like he was feeling it, like he was feeling the pressure, and like he was disappointing fans. And these are things we can't quantify, but clearly to him it was a big important thing.
Yeah, I was really impressed with everything that happened there with Turner and the fans. And I'm almost a little bummed that he's having this run, because it is going to bring the price back up. But as you said, with that draft there, if he's toward the back end of the first round, then I'm in on Turner all day, because I think he's going to be fine. This reminds me of Carlos Beltran's first year in New York. It was a down year. Boom, he went right back to being an absolute monster. I think Turner will be next year too. Let's get back to these September call-ups. Austin Wells also getting called up with New York. Now, when he first came through as a prospect, he was a catcher prospect. I don't think he really catches much anymore. Do I have that right? That he does
I don't believe he catches at all.
This year he's caught actually a bit more than I thought at AA and AAA. Sorry, he is catching more consistently than I thought, but he's a catcher DH, 66 games catching, 30 at DH. I thought it was basically reversed. So he is catching a bit. Do we think Austin Wells, so if he comes up catcher eligible, do you have any interest there? Because right now they're going with Higashioka and Rortvit. I feel like Wells could mix in at DH or catcher. What do you think of Austin Wells? Any interest there?
I mean, as a catcher, absolutely. Like if you're in a 2-catcher league, like you are scraping the bottom of the barrel right now to try to figure things out. And beautifully enough, like I didn't know where he was going to be eligible, like an NFBC, but he is catcher eligible.
I was going to say, I just pulled it up, so you were on it too.
So,
C eligible for Wells.
So I think the only scary part about this is if he DHs more than he catches rest of the way, he will not be next year. He won't be the
Shane Langelier style.
Yeah, or Henry Davis. Like he's not going to be Henry Davis is not going to be catcher eligible in leagues next year, or at least not to start the year. So I'm hoping he catches either exactly the same amount or more than he DHs. That feels maybe like a pipe dream.
Well, it
But
stands healthy right now, though, so I could
yeah,
actually see him getting Austin Wells some time behind the dish consistently. 2-level season, actually a 3-level season for him, but he spent 5 games at A-ball, and then AA and AAA for the most of the year. 107 WRC plus at AA, 99 at AAA, so kind of a league average type guy. 16 homers, 7 steals across those 2 levels in about 400 plate appearances. As a C2, 15 teams, I think that's the best spot for Wells right now.
yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that, as a like everyday outfielder or everyday DH, like he doesn't profile as a fantasy stud at all. But as a catcher, a guy,
Game
like
changer.
he could potentially be like a top 15 catcher rest of the way, because he does a little bit of everything. Like he's got, pretty decent pop, and in that park as a left-handed bat, like that's really, really important. He's got a pretty good hit tool, so which is not something you see very often. So I would probably put him like right below like Yainer Diaz, but Austin Wells is a guy that, especially in 2 catcher formats, I am going to the waiver wire this week to pick up.
Yeah, I like it too. I think Austin Wells could be a nice play down the stretch. And when I said game changer, I meant his catcher eligibility is a game changer, not necessarily that he will be a game changer. That will depend on his playing time. Alexander Canario being pulled up by the Cubs. He was in the Chris Bryant deal back with Caleb Killian a few years ago, and he's on his way up. He spent most of the year at AAA this year. It looks like he's had been injured because he hasn't played that many games. It looks like about 53 games. So he's been hurt, spent some time at the complex in high A, coming back up. But then the bulk of his year, 36 games at AAA, 8 homers, 2 steals, 109 WRC plus. Alexander Canario obviously joins a competing team, so I'd be surprised if he's getting a full-time spot unless he kind of forces his way in. But what do you think of Canario? Is there anything there in the deeper formats?
There is pop in the bat, but it's a pretty bad hit tool. He's not even a top 20 prospect in the Cubs system. I NL only, I think, is the only place you're really looking at him. I don't know where he finds regular playing time when you've got Suzuki and Ian Happ and Tauchman, who's been crazy good this year.
He has a 360 LBP, because I was going to bring up Tauchman because that's the first place people go. Well, get Tauchman out of there, 32-year-old journeyman. He has a 360 OBP. I can give you the rest of his numbers. It doesn't matter. He leads off and has a 360 OBP. That's all they need. That is a great OBP, and he's carrying his weight. So I don't think Tauchman's going anywhere. I think this is a backup role for Canario. And I agree with you, NL only. Our boy Brett Baty's coming back to be with the Mets. Will they just turn him loose and let him play for the whole month? And if so, are you interested? Well, obviously, we don't know for sure, but are you going to speculate that that's going to happen and then pick up Brett Baty?
I think he is. And this reminds me, a little bit of like the Jared Kelenic situation when, Kelenic was been bad at the majors, but he's still raking in the minor leagues, and I just feel like, hey, he's gonna figure things out in the majors at some point. So obviously, Kelenic seemed to figure it out and then forgot it at some point before getting hurt. But I think Baty is a guy that I think he's just too good to struggle the way he did at the major league level. And I think now that they have jettisoned off a bunch of players, he should play every day. Like they should be looking at him as part of this, Mets future. So I think he's going to play every day. I actually just picked him in like the 49th round of my 3-sport draft to be a corner bat for me until Keith Colt comes up, who's also on my team. Keith Colt.
Tigers. Same thing. Keith Colt, Colt Keith.
I'm going to mess up that name for the next decade. Like
I love it. I hope he's around that long for you to keep messing it up.
Yeah, I'm going to call him Keith Colt just because Keith should be his first name, because that is a first name, and Colt sounds much more like a last name. So
that's all fair.
Yeah, I think Baty's a guy that I would take a shot on, especially in deeper forms. Obviously, 10s and 12s, you can kind of wait and see how it plays out a little bit, but in 15s, if you need power, I think Baty is a guy to pick up right now.
Yeah, if they're playing fucking Vogelbach, DJ Stewart, and Rafael Ortega down the stretch here, instead of Mark
besmirch DJ Stewart. That dude is on fire right now.
That is fair. He's
fire.
absolutely blazing. You're right. Let me remove him from there.
Yeah.
If Vogie and Ortega are playing down the stretch over Vientos, Baty, and bring up our next guy here, Ronnie Mauricio.
Yep.
Then I got problems with this team. The problem is, though, I only named 2 guys to come out because you're right. Stewart, they got to keep his heater going right now and keep playing him. But what about Ronnie Moe, who's had an amazing season? 2020, 23 homers, 24 steals at AAA, 292 average. I will say this, only a 107 WRC plus because I guess the International League offense is up a bit too, because I would have thought that this slash line would have produced more than a 107. But the fantasy juice is there with Ronnie Mauricio. What kind of playing time does he have? And are you interested in him more, less, or the same than Baty?
I mean, just see where he plays. I guess. I mean, second base. I mean, he's not playing over Lindor, so he's not a shortstop.
Second base, move McNeil to left, kick Ortega to the curb.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the move.
And then Baty at third, Vientos to DH.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would be
pwned.
Yeah, that should be what they do. Mauricio has all the power and speed to like be a really, really interesting fantasy guy. Now, he's not as fast as maybe the stolen base numbers in the minors say he is. I think he's
don't
more
have
of
to
an
be fast though if you're smart.
Yeah, and with the new base running rules, like you can take advantage of things. I mean, we're seeing it all over the place, right? So I do think that he is a guy that if he can make enough contact, and the nice thing is he has made some real big gains, and they're not like we've talked a number of times about how like with the automated strike zone and things in the minor leagues, like some people are making like gains in terms of percentage and strikeout percentage that maybe aren't as real or won't stick in the majors. But we're talking about a guy who in 2021 struck out 33% of the time, 24% of the time. It's now striking out 18% of the time in 532 plate appearance. I think Ronnie Mauricio is making some good changes.
Yep.
He can make enough contact, which has always been kind of his the thing he struggled with. Yeah, watch out. I think Mauricio could be the most interesting guy on this list that we've talked about so far.
Totally agree. Could absolutely be a fantasy game changer down the stretch. Ronnie Mauricio with the Mets. The New York team's really making some noise there. Dominguez, Wells, Baty, Mauricio. One of those 4 I think could be a fantasy game changer. Multiple could. Tough part is guessing exactly who, but I think you got to kind of assess what you need because you can fill different needs there. Dominguez, Ronnie Moe with the speed, Baty, and Wells more, I think, with some power there. Of course, catcher for Wells makes him a totally different character. Let's talk Colton Cowser returning to Baltimore. Playing time is not going to be evident for a ton off rip. Like he's going to have to force his way in a bit, right? Because Hayes, Mullins, Santander, that's the outfield. And Mountcastle's cooking at DH. So this feels just like a backup role where Colton Cowser is going to get a little bit more PT. He hasn't done much in his MLB sample this year. Do you have any interest in Colton Cowser, or are you worried that there's just not enough PT?
Yeah, I don't think there's enough PT this year, unless somebody is going on the IL today that we're not really expecting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine where Cowser gets a shot to play full time. This is a guy to keep an eye on as a really cheap pick next year because I think Mountcastle or Santander are going to get traded.
Have to.
So probably Mountcastle. I think they will try to figure out a way to maybe try to trade him for some pitching. But this year, I don't think Cowser is going to factor in a ton. I just don't see the path playing time.
I'm with that. If something opens up, we can reassess him. But right now, I'm just not sure where the PT is, especially for a contending team that's trying to hold on to that number 1 AL East spot and the number 1 spot in the American League as well. Kyren Paris getting called up to the Angels. Another young prospect. He's skipping AAA. That's nothing for the Angels, right? Skipping AAA. Come on. Yeah. How about skipping like every league, like Shanwell? Kyren Paris, though, coming up, another power speed guy, should play because they just gave away half their team. 14 homers, 44 steals. Are you going for Kyren Paris? Also a 29% K rate, worth mentioning at AA. But the 21-year-old does run. Is Kyren Paris on your list this weekend?
Probably not. Like maybe if I really need some middle help, but man, dude, just all he does is strike out. Like, I know there's power, I know there's speed, but he just strikes out so darn much. And while skipping AAA isn't as big of a development issue as it had, has been previously, I just worry that Paris is one of those guys that is just not a finished product. And or if he is a finished product, then he's got a huge hole in his game.
It's a scary, it's scary if that's if that's finished product with 29% K rate at AA. That's problematic for Paris.
I think they're going to give him opportunity, right? Because Luis Renfroe is their shortstop right now, so and they hate that guy.
They're always looking to put him back on the bench, right?
I think he goes back to super utility role on the bench, and I think that Paris gets the opportunity to play regularly at shortstop. But I don't know. I don't know. It's a great park to hit in, so maybe, but.
He's got to be on your radar if you're chasing speed, right? There's just too many steals from Paris with 44 in AA that if you're chasing speed, I don't think you can be picky enough to not take a look at him, especially if you believe he's going to play the way Justin does, which is go be a shortstop, which I agree with you. I think he should be close to the starting shortstop. They can move Renfroe all over the place. Paris, by the way, is a right-handed hitter, so I don't think it's going to be short side platoon, though. I think he's going to get an opportunity to play a decent bit, and if you can afford the average hit, if you can afford to maybe trade some average for steals, I think Paris could be a solid pickup in that realm.
Yeah, and I will say he does walk a lot. We're talking about a 17% walk rate in AAA this year.
AA.
In AA this year, a 19%, almost 20% in AA last year. So
fantastic.
They are totally cool with putting guys who maybe aren't great with contact but walk a ton at the top of that lineup. Yep. And so I definitely am going to be watching this weekend in terms of hey, where's he hitting the lineup? Is he playing all the games this weekend? Because if he is hitting first or second in that lineup in front of Shohei Ohtani, I'm going to be bidding on him on Sunday. So
that's fair. I don't think he will though, because Seanwell with a 457 OBP, he's kind of taking that number one spot. But your point is,
if you could put Paris and Seanwell in front of Ohtani,
if they do that, if they move Paris to 2. And so then it's Seanwell, Paris, Ohtani. I'm with you. Of course, that's runs galore, even if he does struggle to get on base consistently. So, I'm with you on that. We'll keep tabs on Paris this weekend. And that's another thing, too. A lot of this could change based on the weekend. It'll be a short sample, of course, but we'll have 3 games to kind of get an idea of where these guys are going to be utilized.
All about playing time, right? If we're seeing guys on a 3-game weekend playing every day, then we can make the assumption that these guys are everyday players. If Paris comes in and only plays 1 game this set, he's not going to be on my
that wouldn't be great. So
be very, very cognizant of the games played right now for these first 3 games of the month.
Yeah, and it's a small sample, but you have to go off of it. That's the best we've got.
We've only got a small sample left.
Exactly.
We legitimately have 36 days left in the season. That is it. So
the weekend's 10% of that almost, Yeah. So ideally, you get a righty and a lefty at some point in the week so you can really see what the 2 lineups look like, but you just got to go off your best guess and see where these guys are at.
Andre, the Angels are facing 2 lefties and a righty.
Perfect. So we will run the gamut. We will really see what's up. Paris should get a chance to start against both lefties, you would think. Although, actually, no, their lineup's already out, and he's not in. Oh, wait, no, that's an old lineup. That's yesterday's. They faced a lefty on Wednesday.
They don't play till tonight. So.
Yeah, they didn't play yesterday, I should say. They played on Wednesday. That's the lefty lineup. So we'll see how that goes with them. A couple other guys here on the lower end. Andre Lipcius with Detroit. He was doing all right in the minors. Nothing too special. He's an okay hitter type. PT, I think, has a chance to be there, though, because it's the Tigers. Don't call up a young guy and then not play him. So Lipcius at AAA, 10 homers, 96 WRC plus. Good plate skills, not a whole lot going on. I can't really see any avenues outside of, what's it called, AL only. Maybe he plays third base with Matt Vierling there right now. I think you can put Lipcius in at third. But even with PT, is Lipcius doing anything for you?
No.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What about Nick Loft? Yeah, it's very empty right now. If he gets hot, we can make a turn there. But right now, he should be deep on your list if he's making the list at all. What about Nick Lofton with KC? He's an infielder, outfielder type. 14 homers, 6 steals in AAA with a 95 WRC plus. So somewhat Lipcius like, but with the speed thrown in there, 6 steals. Although it is 6 for 10 on the bases. Anything for Nick Lofton? That's Loftin.
I mean, I don't think so. I think this is very similar. Like, but I think the difference is he's a guy that can play. He can play anywhere, right? He doesn't play any position particularly well. And he's played a lot of third base and second base, but he can play third base, second base, corner outfield. And the Royals have a lot more openings than some of these other teams in terms of where they can slot guys in. And so they may say, hey, listen, the next 36 days, you're going to play a lot because we want to see, one, where you really fit into this lineup, and two, if you're part of the future. He is a compiler type guy, though. Like, he's got a good hit tool and not much else. So in order for him to be impactful, especially in that park, which suppresses power to begin with, he needs to play every day. So this is another one of these guys where we're going to watch through the weekend, only for 15 team leagues in AL only. If he plays every game, especially if he plays at different positions every day, then we can go, okay, maybe he's the $1 buy in a mixed league to kind of take a gamble. But outside of that, like, he's not a difference maker necessarily on this list.
No, it's hard to see Nick Lofton coming up and doing a whole bunch for KC. But if he plays a bunch in deep leagues, playing time's king. So we'll see what's up. Not a September call-up, but is back. And holy smokes, kind of surprising. I had really forgotten about Michael Brantley, but here he is back with the Astros. He started each of the first 2 games since being back. We know who Michael Brantley is, right? Batting average type guy, joining a great team. Are you interested in Michael Brantley this weekend?
I guess. I mean, he's another one of these guys, like, right? Like, Michael Brantley's stat line at the end of the season ends up ranking really high in the outfield ranks when he plays a full year because he just accumulates. Well, the problem is when we're talking about a 36-day sample, he doesn't have time to accumulate.
True. This is a batting average pickup, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it is. But the problem is, like batting average is so fluky. Like, it's just such a fluky stat, especially in small samples. So, like, if he hit 330 the entire, or rest of the way, I'd be like, oh yeah, like, that's going to really help you, and you're going to be glad to hit Michael Brantley. But he could run like a 220 BABIP and be making decent contact and hit 245, and you're like, well, I just wasted a spot on Michael Brantley. So I guess if you're like desperate for batting average, I get it, because he is going to play every day.
Yeah.
But
they got him playing.
Like, that is like, it's a really small scenario in terms of why you would want Michael Brantley at this point.
I agree. It's very narrow batting average. You're chasing, and you might not even get it. It's so hard to chase batting average, especially in a short sample. It's hard enough to do it over the course of the year, but in a tiny sample,
I mean,
you
DJ
can twist
Stewart's
yourself into
hit
circles.
417 over the last
Just pick him
2
up.
weeks. And he's not a guy we think about for batting average. So it just tells you, like, small sample. As the police come for me, I don't know if you can hear that in the background.
I can hear it. They are coming for you. I was actually going to make a joke about it too.
For talking about DJ Stewart as a batting average asset, but anybody at this point is a batting average asset. Yeah, can be if they get hot, and anyone can be a batting average liability. We talked about last episode, and you and I were talking about prior to the show, like, benching Luis Arraez right now. Like, I get it. Like, like, anybody who's known for batting average can go cold for 36 days.
Yeah, and if you're we talked a lot about that with Arraez. Like, if he can't actually help you, even if he gets hot again and hits 390, that might not offer you enough points for what DJ Stewart's like 4 homers could.
Yeah.
So you really have to make some tough decisions. I put this one on just to kind of laugh because I had no idea this guy was in the organization, but Kolten Wong is coming up for the Dodgers. I can't imagine he gets anything but sporadic playing time, defensive replacements, anything here with Kolten Wong.
No.
You don't think you take Mookie Betts' spot?
Maybe you need to drop Mookie Betts. If you were in a league against me, please drop Mookie
Please
Betts.
drop him because Kolten Wong is going to come take that spot at second base. And I don't think there's nowhere else for Betts to play then. And why do they bring up Kolten Wong if they're not going to play him? You know?
I mean, they wouldn't want to play Mookie Betts over Jason Heyward.
No. Jason Hayward's cooking.
Can I just say that I was not wrong about the Dodgers lineup not being as good this year?
Are you sure you weren't?
But holy crap! I mean, did they steal the Cardinals' devil magic? Because like the lineups they put out there, sometimes I look at it from like a DFS perspective or whatever, or just when I'm randomly looking at lineups and I go, like, this is not a great team, but this is the best team in baseball. And
it is
zero effing sense.
Okay, so I get what you're saying, right? Like, you look at some of these lineups, because we talked about how they're not the Avengers anymore. That was kind of the exact phrase that we used, saying like they're good, but they're not their otherworldly offense right now this year. And we'll see where it's kind of half of a lineup and then half of like some sketchiness. They got a rookie like James Outman and Michael Busch. What are they going to do? Crusty guys like Peralta and Hayward. And so we had some skepticism about how deep the lineup would be.
Muncie's hitting like Mendoza line. Batting
average, he's hitting 208,
right?
But he has a 338 OBP and a 494 slug.
Yeah.
So
and
Muncie's doing exactly what he needs
runs,
to do.
Like,
I love Muncie. That was one I got Muncie right. I was all over that one. But with where maybe you were wrong, and I say you more because it was your driving force. I'm not trying to shirk responsibility here, but is it just in doubting the Dodgers in general? Is that the mistake? Like the process of looking at these players and saying these players are not that good. Like, why am I in on Jason Heyward? I think if you add Jason Hayward's OPS pluses the last 2 years, they don't equal what he's done this year. In fact, it's actually 4 points better. 125 if you add them in 21 and 22 to the 121 this year. So, you weren't betting on a 33-year-old Jason Heyward. There's logic in that. Like, you're not wrong. But is the problem that we should just not doubt the Dodgers because of their devil magic? Is that the lesson to be learned here?
I feel like Mookie Betts is a superpower. Like, anyone around Mookie Betts just gets
and Freeman,
better.
I think both. I think they both just their aura spreads to the rest of the team.
It's unreal, because if you told me that David Peralta was going to hit 3rd or 5th in this lineup,
now he's not even doing that well. That one makes no sense that he's still playing as much as he is.
Like, but if you told me that was like, hey, we're going to be at this time of the season, and the only bat they're really missing is JD Martinez, and David Peralta and Jason Heyward are hitting 5th, 6th in this lineup, I would have told you that, and I bet on the Diamondbacks to win this division. I would have told you that the Dodgers aren't winning a division here. It's not like their pitching has been like.
Well, I was just about to bring that up. We also had concerns about the depth of pitching, and that's proven correct. I think that we got right because.
If they find a way,
they find a way. Miller's popped off, even when Stone flopped and Sheehan flopped. Okay, Bobby Miller's the guy. Then they trade for Lance Lynn. Yes, he got beat up by Atlanta. There's no shame in that. It's Atlanta. He's been elite prior to that run, to getting beat up a little bit last night by Atlanta. Kershaw's done a Kershaw season, missed some time as he always does, but amazing when he pitches. Urias hasn't even been himself. 4.41 ERA, but a 1.11 WHIP. Yeah, they just get it done. So I think the lesson to be taken from this is to just not doubt them. Absolutely. I think your process was fine, except that you were analyzing the wrong team. Like if you have that same process and those players are on any other team that isn't maybe the Rays or the Cardinals, the other two teams that have heavy devil magic, then I think you're right. But because it was the Dodgers, they just get it done. And I'm being partly tongue-in-cheek.
And they're going to sign Ohtani next year. So it's like, because they're going to be able to pitch them. They go, listen, we won 105 games
with these jokers,
with David Peralta hitting 4th and 5th. Imagine if we put you in this lineup, and then we'll wait till your arm is better. We'll figure out a pitching strategy for you. Yeah. As a Giants fan who passionately hates the Dodgers, putting aside taking my analyst cap off and putting aside
fandom cap.
Yeah, and putting a fandom cap on. God, it sucks to have them as our rivals. Like, it just
absolutely, dude.
It absolutely sucks because not only are they just so good at putting these teams together, even when they don't have, they're not spending $500 million a year. They can spend $500 million a year, and they get all the players I like. I love Trey Turner. I love Max Scherzer. I love Mookie Betts. I love Freddie Freeman.
All on that team.
I love Shohei Ohtani. And like the Giants are going to offer him like $1 billion and like a 40% stake in the team, and he's going to go to the Dodgers and just murder us for the next decade.
That is probably going to happen. The Ohtani to the Dodger rumors are hot, and they make a lot of sense too, especially with their down spending this past offseason, kind of saving up to go for him. I will say this about the Dodgers as we move on. I'm not giving up on Michael Busch. He did not do anything this year. 57 WRC plus and 77 plate appearances. That means nothing to me.
He don't run last night.
Cooked at AAA off a lefty.
Yeah.
He went lefty last night. It was a nice, impressive homer there for Michael Busch. But yeah, I just want to point that out. I'll be talking about him all off season.
There's only one problem.
What's that?
With Michael Busch and us being excited potentially of him being a really, really cheap end of the draft pick next year. If they sign Ohtani, he's got no place to play. He sucks defensively. He has got
that's a good point.
That becomes a real issue for Michael Busch because Michael Busch, his bat will play. I think his bat will play at the major league level. I'm not worried about what he's shown in terms of like his overall stat line and stuff. I think his bat's going to play. He is Daniel Murphy. Daniel.
No, that's exactly the right.
And if Ohtani is the full-time DH next year, I don't know that he plays defensively well enough to be. He needs a trade. He needs to be traded somewhere.
That's fair. I mean, I'm still going to take him in DCs and whatnot. By the way, the homer was off a righty, not lefty for Busch.
Yeah, right.
But that's a good point, bringing in Ohtani. Now, here's a question.
Yeah.
If Ohtani is not pitching next year, why not make him an outfielder?
Well, because do you really want him throwing coming off of Tommy John surgery?
Oh, yeah.
Like throwing from the outfield? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but what if he doesn't get it?
And Mookie Betts is playing second base just because
they can.
They can right now.
They can. They have one of the best right fielders just hanging out in the infield because they got Hayward.
He may have the best arm of any outfielder in baseball, and he's playing second base right now. So I think they probably address second base in the offseason and move Mookie Betts back out into the outfield. So
that's fair.
I think the one thing, well, no, you got Freeman there. You can't play. Show that.
Yeah, that I was going to say that too, and then I was like, yeah, Freeman. So no, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Play shortstop.
Probably. He probably can. Could, yeah. But yeah, that does hurt. That does hurt Busch's outlook. Again, that shit can sort itself out though. So I'm still going to take the talent, but I totally agree with you that is a roadblock. Hell, that should keep the price cheaper then, right? Like if and when Ohtani signs.
Legitimately, I don't think he's going in 30-round draft. So I think you can get him for I know we kind of meme on you get him for free, but you're going to get Michael Busch for free next year. He is going to be extremely cheap. And he's a guy I'll take a gamble on, especially like you said in DC's 30th round of a 30-round draft. Take a shot because I do think the bat plays if they can figure out a defensive home for him.
Yep, or a trade for Michael Busch.
Yeah.
Nick Lodolo out for the rest of the year, and I want to bring this up because about talking about going for guys with these timetables, right? We've beat this point home, but now we have a couple examples where it went to the negative. Nick Lodolo and Oneil Cruz were stashes for people because they're going to come back in August. And I get it. And sometimes it pays off. You go for a guy, you stash him. I'm not saying never do it. It never works. But here's the downside. And now that we have a couple downsides on it with Oneil and Lodolo getting pushed and Lodolo out for the year, I wanted to bring it up again. And I kind of wanted to see where you are after this year. Another year in the books, pretty much. We got one more month. Where are you still somebody who will take injury stashes? Are you all the way out on them? Is it still case by case? Where do you currently stand? Because I lean pretty much no, unless they're already on rehab. And even that's not guaranteed, right? Something could go wrong in the rehab. But for me, they pretty much already have to be going. That's why I was open to taking a Jake Fraley stash because he's on rehab right now. But where do you stand after seeing Lodolo and Oneil Cruz kind of flop relative to the expectations?
Yeah, I mean, so typically I'm like you, right? Typically I am the guy that like until at least see them on rehab, and usually I want to see them progressing on rehab, so move from complex or low A to a higher level before I want to take a gamble on a stash, and that often means I'm not going to get some of these guys, right? Like,
Yeah.
people were stashing Trevor Story before he ever even started his rehab, right?
Mm-hmm.
People were stashing O'Neal Cruz and Ludolo even though they never started a rehab assignment, right? This year, I did stash O'Neal Cruz and Ludolo in leagues because my teams have been so good and so healthy that I could afford to do it, right? Like,
And that's why there's no hard, fast rules either, right? Because
yeah.
if your team has an opening, I'm not against taking a shot like that.
But at the end of the day, I was wrong. And not only was I wrong, it actively hurt me in leagues because my team didn't stay healthy,
Yeah.
and then I'm in this position like, well, now do I drop this guy or do I hold on to him because I've been stashing him for a month anyways? But now I have 4 guys on my bench on the IL and not just Nick Ludolo or just O'Neal Cruz. And I think that I think I got a little greedy, and that was a mistake because it's left me with less flexibility than I would have liked in certain leagues. And now some of my leagues are starting to struggle a little bit, and we're getting the stretch run, and I still want to pull out championships. So I've already dropped these guys, or I dropped O'Neal Cruz last week. I'll drop Nick Ludolo this week. But I think in the future, I'm going to go back to what I did before, which is what you do. And that is, I'm not touching these guys until I see them on a rehab assignment.
Yep.
And
rehab only.
Yeah, and I really want to see them kind of progress a rehab assignment, right? I want to see them go from whatever lower level they start at to, AA or AAA before I put in a bid on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think that's where I stand with it. And again, I'll miss out on some that hit. This isn't saying never do it. It never works. Manage to your style. For me, I don't want to do it unless they're on rehab and pretty close to returning. Others may take bigger gambles and have the bigger returns, right? It's a risk-reward situation. All right, let's get in 2 steps. It's been a bit of a long episode, so we'll kind of speed through them. You give me where you're starting these guys, if anywhere. Brandon Pfaadt, Colorado at home, and then a trip to the Cubs.
I think I'm starting Pfaadt in most leagues. Like,
yeah, I think he's considerable everywhere. Like, he's not a must in 10s or anything, or even 12s, but I think he's on the table in every format right now with the way he's been pitching since his latest recall.
And especially when you get to start off against Colorado, who is leaving a 7 day home stretch to go on the road. Like, we've talked about this, right? Like, Rockies hitters struggle on the road, but they really struggle at the beginning of a road trip, right? Because they haven't acclimated back to how the ball moves in normal air as opposed to thin air in in altitude in Colorado. So I think the strength of that offsets maybe a little bit of the weakness of having to go up against the Cubs. But it's not Atlanta. Like, I'm not super afraid of the Cubs necessarily.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I'm looking here at his numbers real quick. So Brandon Pfaadt, since returning, has 8 starts of a 4.17 ERA, which doesn't stand out like, oh my God, that's whatever. However, he has 2 starts against the Dodgers, neither of which you should have started him for. So I think you can reasonably remove those 8 2/3 with 9 earned runs, and then it's a 294, right? Because if you're curating somebody like Pfaadt, especially in shallower leagues, why would you ever start him against the Dodgers? And so 294 ERA in 6 starts since the return is really impressive. You mentioned the Colorado piece. Chicago is good, respect them, but they are not a runaway sort of team. Brandon Pfaadt is viable anywhere that you're streaming guys. Darius Vines for Atlanta came up and put up a really, really impressive debut, especially when you consider it was against Colorado in Colorado. So shouts to Vines. Did not know anything about him when he was coming up. Ended up watching that start. 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 base runners, 5 Ks for Darius Vines, 25-year-old right-hander. He's on the Braves too. If you're win seeking, is there any interest in him? He gets 2 home starts against St. Louis and Pittsburgh. Is Darius Vines on your radar next week?
Yes, but I just get like a flashback, a little PTSD episode of Winans where I tried this with Winans, and
I was so mad that I didn't get Winans. I was so mad. I was like, that's my guy, dude. I need wins. And he got cooked. So you're worried that Vines could be similar.
Yeah, but I mean, if you are win seeking right now, like there's no better team to pitch for than the Atlanta Braves. Like the Atlanta Braves have just an insane offense. You could give up 6 earned runs in 5 innings and get a pretty easy win because they win, 74-6. So like it's just so if you're win seeking, I have no problem. Vines is kind of a command over stuff kind of guy, and so if the command is looking good, he's going to pitch well. If it's not, he could get beat the hell up. So if you are trying to protect your ratios at all right now, I think probably would skip Vines.
Yes, because it could be implosion city.
Yeah,
if things go the wrong way. And I will say, he throws like 90. And that was the thing with Winans too, is kind of a soft tosser, but he was 28, Vines is 25, a little bit more prospect viability here, but I would probably look at the Winans bids, lower them, and that's where I'm at on Vines. And if somebody wants to pay Winans prices or more, let them.
I will say you're not going to find an easier 2-step for the Atlanta Braves in St. Louis and Pittsburgh right now.
So. Both at home too, which is just better to pitch at home. Truist is not a bad place to hit necessarily, but you still want guys at home more often than not. Kyle Hendricks, San Francisco and Arizona, both at home. He's been pitching very well. Maybe he shouldn't even be on this. Maybe he's back to automatic status, but I want to get your thoughts on Hendricks because he has been pitching very well since his return. Is he back to automatic status for you?
I don't know if he's automatic, but yeah, I mean, he's back to being like, hey, he probably should be in your lineup each week. And it's just so weird, man. I thought he was done. Like
I left him for dead. Yeah,
he's throwing 46 miles an hour. Like it's like how he makes it work. I don't know. But the Giants aren't an offense that you're super worried about. The Diamondbacks have taken a little bit of a step back. They're not an offense you're necessarily worried about. Gets and 2 both home starts. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, pick him up where he's available, Kyle Hendricks, but in 15s he's already rostered and being started consistently as he should. Gavin Williams, mentioned him earlier, Minnesota and at the Angels, but he left his last start with the injury. So I guess there's still some question there, and we'll probably get some clarity about it on the weekend. Let's operate as though Gavin Williams is going to make this 2-step. How interested are you in that, assuming the right knee soreness is nothing?
If he is pitching, and the beauty of this is you're going to know because Monday is his scheduled start. So you'll know if he's pitching. If he's pitching, then I'm using him. If he's not pitching, then I'm not using him. So
I think it's that simple. And they don't seem to be particularly worried about the knee. That's what they said. So we'll see if everything's good there, but just keep tabs on it, and then you'll kind of know what's going on with him. Jesse Scholtens for the White Sox actually has a sub-4 ERA. Now, some of that's been put together in the bullpen, but he's been starting lately and, up and down. There's been a few good starts. There's been a few bad starts. He was great in Baltimore last time. Well, he's good in Baltimore last time. Only allowed 1 run in 5 1/3, but also only had 1 K. So it's slop, but it's at KC and at Detroit, and we're in do or die situation here in September. Are the matchups enough to get you to go for Jesse Scholtens?
If you're like me and you're win seeking in my main event, you are riding Jesse Scholtens' coattails right now.
I think I am. He'll be on my list, dude. I'm desperate for wins. And while the White Sox suck, so do KC and Detroit. These are win opportunities.
Yeah. And actually, I think it's my Oxford championship team that I'm riding Jesse Scholtens. But yeah, I'm riding with him. Who would you rather start, Jesse Scholtens or teammate Michael Kopech?
Oh my God!
I am finally going to drop. I don't know who for yet.
Good,
but I'm finally dropping.
I think I would take Scholtens, to be honest. I think it's a tighter window of up. Upside downside. I think is a tighter window than Kopech.
Yeah,
I'm with you. JP France. This is really only for the 10 teamers because I think in 12s and 15s, people's confidence is back in him. He had the bad start against Boston. I implored people not to bench him in the repeat against Boston. Only because of the 10 earned. Like if that's your only reason, you're making a mistake. If you just don't want to start somebody in Fenway, I get it. But he did throw 5 2/3, 2 runs. So he bounced back. JP France did. He's been great all year outside of the 10 earned against Boston. He goes to Texas and gets San Diego at home. That's a pretty tough 2-step. But do you like JP France in 10 teamers this week? Is he at least in your consideration board?
I don't think so. I mean, with this 2-step, I think it's just too dangerous. I mean, I know Texas hasn't been like the powerhouse that they were earlier on in the season, but it's still a really good lineup. San Diego, I know they haven't been the powers we thought they were going to be this year. It's still a really good lineup. I'm not messing with these two, especially both. Like if we were talking about, oh, it's the Rangers, but then he goes to Oakland, yeah, then I'm in on that one.
Are you worried in 12s about JP France?
I am.
15s?
Yeah. I mean, 15s, you just may not have another freaking option. So
no, I think 15s he's a must, to be honest, because if you're win seeking, he has 10 wins. He's only allowed more than 4 earned twice this year. The 10 earned run bomb and then a 6 earned run back on May 17th against the Cubs. I like France a little bit more than you. I think he's at least in the considerations, in your consideration list for 10s and 12s. Not a must, especially because he doesn't really get Ks. But if you're a win chaser, we've been talking about win chasing throughout this entire two-step segment here. I think that puts France at least on the board. I understand your trepidation. I think if you're chasing wins, you might not be able to be as discerning with it. You might have to go with him. What about JP France versus this next guy, Reid Detmers? He's home twice against Baltimore and Cleveland. Cleveland, of course, is half of Detmers' old team, but that's pitchers, so he doesn't have to face them. But what do you think of Detmers? He's been amazingly frustrating this year, but more good than bad. Is he a two-start for you, Reid Detmers?
Yeah, I think he is. I spent my last $65 in Tout Wars on Reid Detmers. Now, Tout Wars has $0 bids.
Yes, so you can still make moves.
So I can still make moves, and I was able to drop a bunch of guys because they have a reclaim process.
You get the benefit back.
I think is the best rule Tout Wars has. There's some rules I don't love about Tout Wars, but for those who don't know what this is, if you have a player that is on your IL that you decide to drop, so for instance, Brandon Donovan, right? I bought him for $5. And he's out for the year, so I dropped him. Well, they gave me $25 back. It's after the trade deadline, and so we get 5 times whatever we spent on him in the original auction, right?
That's so good.
Earlier this season, I dropped Drew Rasmussen, right? Getting Tommy John done for the year. Before the trade deadline, it was 10 times. So I spent $12 on Drew Rasmussen. I got $120 in Pfaadt. It's a great rule to offset
so much strategy.
And it just offsets the the chance that some guy is gonna get hurt. If you lost Jacob deGrom, you spent $30 of your 260 on him at the draft table. Like, you shouldn't go home empty-handed, and so to be able to get like a bunch of
and only 30 doesn't really do anything either. So getting that 5 or 10x really gives you an opportunity to go back into the waiver pool and try to get something.
It's a great rule.
I agree. It's very cool.
So so I reclaimed a few guys. I should have reclaimed Joe Musgrove. I don't think Musgrove's coming back, but I just held on to him just because what's available. But so I picked up Reid Detmers. And I am definitely using him in Tout Wars. That's obviously a 15-team league, but I think he's definitely in the conversation for 12s and even maybe some 10s.
I think he's viable in 10s. I do. Baltimore and Cleveland at home, those are not punishing. Well, Baltimore's offense is good. I don't want to besmirch them. Cleveland, you like that start?
I'm going to double check. I don't think Baltimore is that great against lefties.
Oh, okay.
So I'm double checking because I don't want to talk out my ass.
See what's up with them. I will point out while you're looking that up that Detmers has been better at home by over a run in ERA, 456 to 560, with a 3.5 strikeout to walk ratio versus 1.9 on the road. So you love the 2 home starts for Detmers.
Okay, well, I wasn't necessarily talking out my ass, but Baltimore's a little bit better than I thought versus lefties. They're 9th in baseball in WOBA versus lefties. But, I mean, that is in part due to, they are just really good against righties. So,
I think, with Baltimore, they can get you. But I think with somebody like Detmers, his upside is so much that I think you got to go for it in a lot of spots. Obviously, if you're ratio protecting, you don't mess with a guy who has a 140 whip. But in every other sort of chase scenario, I think Detmers is very appealing. Are you going to enter the Woo and start Bryan Woo at Cincinnati and at Tampa Bay? That is a pretty tough 2-step. But Woo has been wonderful this year. Where are you starting Bryan Woo, if anywhere?
I mean, I think in 10s, you can kind of pick and choose your battles, right? you should have pretty good options on your bench, or maybe Woo is the bench guy that you're debating. And so maybe in that situation at 10, I'm not starting Woo, but I think in 12s and 15s, like he's just been too good. And while Cincinnati at home is a pretty scary start, like Cincinnati hasn't been amazing offensively.
Yeah.
So, and I know they just added a couple bats, but like they're not bats you're afraid of necessarily. Are you really afraid of Hunter Renfroe or
I'm
Bader?
afraid of Renfroe. I'm afraid of Renfroe.
Yeah. All right.
Renfroe can go a yard on you at any moment, but Bader does not scare me. So I'm with you to that point.
And
I think with Woo,
Tampa hasn't been as hot either. So like I think I'm okay taking the shot. Especially at 15, you're definitely doing it. In a 12, I think it's debatable. In a 10, I mean, unless you really don't have other options.
I think it's on the table in 10s too, if you want to.
Exactly.
Like you don't have to though. With Bryan Woo in Seattle, Zack Thompson, I think you're going to say no after the first one because it's at Atlanta, and then at Cincinnati. Which again, Cincinnati's not been great, but this is still a very difficult 2-step. I like Zack Thompson. He's actually on my bench in the main, but he's going to remain there this week with at Atlanta and at Cincy. The Atlanta start alone cancels him out, right?
It was nice to see him finally go 5 innings in a couple starts, because I just didn't think that was going to ever happen, really. But yeah, no, Atlanta, no, Lance Lynn just got murdered by Atlanta. Zack Thompson, the only Thompson I care about in St. Louis is Matt Thompson. We've been over.
That's right. That's right. We have been clear about that. Matt Thompson is our favorite entity related to St. Louis in any way, shape, or form. Taj Bradley might be coming back. This is a penciled in kind of thing. We don't know, but it would be Boston and Seattle both at home. Are you specking on Taj Bradley? Even if he doesn't get a 2-step, any interest in specking on him just in hopes of September goodness?
Probably not. Like he's probably already rostered in most 15-team leagues.
Which is probably where the bulk of his value lies.
Yeah, which is the only place I would really consider it. Like his problems have gotten only worse in AAA. Like as much as we gave Tampa Bay's organization grief for sending him down the first time and then the second time, I mean there's a reason why they did. They know these players better than us. And like he has given up over 2 home runs per 9. And has walked almost 5 per 9. He's in AAA. He's got 11.6% walk rate in AAA this year. Like, and the home run rate is astronomical as well. So, no thanks. I think I'm going to pass. Even in 15s, I don't think he is really up for consideration when you're talking about Houston.
Yeah, Taj Bradley can make things really difficult for you. Like it could go really sideways. He's been better of late in AAA. What?
I was gonna say, I said he's pitching Houston. I was looking at Andrew Heaney's 2-step.
Oh, okay, but it's Boston, Seattle for Bradley anyway.
I still don't want it.
Yeah, that's not great. I will point out better in AAA of late, but still pretty scary. This is another guy though. Put him in the Michael Busch category for me. I'm not leaning off of him next year. I'll be all over Taj Bradley next year.
Yeah.
I still really, really like his long term. I think the price will be right, and he's one of those guys that could absolutely pop next year. Let's finish with your boy Dog, Andrew Heaney. Houston and Oakland, both at home. Do you take on the Houston one to get the Oakland one? And how worried are you that the first one is going to set such a bad precedent that he won't even be able to save himself in Oakland? Because your boy, he hasn't been his normal self, right? Usually the deal with Heaney is good when he pitches. You never know when he's going to be pitching. But he's actually pitched more this year, 128 innings, 26 starts. 4.16 ERA doesn't kill you in a deep league, but a 135 whip is no good. 9 wins. The Ks are still above a K per inning. He's been okay, but he not like last year where when Heaney was pitching, he was a god. He just only pitched 73 innings. So what do you think of Heaney? Houston, Oakland, both at home. Is there enough here? You're a longtime Heaney lover.
So since August 1st, he's got a 2.39 ERA.
You buying all the way back in?
Absolutely not. You have fooled me too many times.
Look at your wow! I'm impressed. I'm impressed with your resolve here to not be sucked back in.
You know what is actually going to happen, right? He's going to pitch really well against Houston and get destroyed by the A's.
That's so Andrew Heaney that it's not even funny.
If you don't care about your whip, I get making a play here because you get that Oakland start, but I mean,
and more wins chasing.
Yeah, let's be honest. Like, how much better after all the moves that the Angels have made recently is the Angels than Oakland right now. Like, yes, they have Ohtani, but that's it. Like, and
well, because of the injuries, right? Like that, I think that's what gets underrated with the Angels is that like they made the moves to go in, which I still fully back them going and getting the guys that they did. But then they hit a wave of injuries. You can make a lineup out of.
Wait, hold on a sec. Andrew Heaney's on Houston.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about the Angels?
I don't know. You brought him up.
Well, it's because you have him going up against Houston on the sheet.
Is he not facing Houston?
Oh, he's on the Rangers. Oh,
he's on Texas.
Wow. I need to stop waking up early for these episodes. I'm leaving this in. I'm leaving.
Yeah, that's fine. Houston and Oakland for him. I thought you were making a comparison between the Angels and the A's.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I was just for some reason thinking he was still on the Angels. And
so Houston and Oakland, both at home for Heaney. I think wins chasers are going for it if you can afford the whip pain.
Yeah, but even in this really good stretch since the beginning of August, he's got a 133 whip. Like
I believe it.
Like
that's him.
Yeah, like he's not Heaney. Walking guys. Like that's the thing. Like he hasn't allowed more than 2 walks in any start since the beginning of August, but he's still got a 133 whip. So he's decided like, hey, instead of walking guys, I'm just gonna be hittable. I'm gonna let you guys hit me a little bit and hope that I can strike out the next guy.
Yep.
So it's high risk, high reward. Like, and I think at this time of year, if you are really in tune with your standings and your team, you can make these gambles. But you really need to be in tune with your team and your standings. Like if you're right now, like just saying, well, he's starting, so I'm putting him in my lineup, or he's got 2 steps, so I'm putting him in my lineup, and you're not looking at how that can affect your standings, whether it's in a Roto League, and I know a lot of people out there play points or head-to-head categories, like be in tune with what your team can do, because the last thing you want to do is destroy the end of your season by just starting guys just because they have a 2-step.
Yep. I think that's a good call. You have to be careful there and be mindful of the risk that you're taking. And I recommend doing a lot of math here. I know that that's not the most fun thing to do, but see what X number of innings of this ERA or this whip actually do for your team to get more perspective. If Heaney gives me a 150 whip in 9 innings this week, what does it do? You know, okay, it moves me this much. That's not so bad. I can take that risk. Like, go run through some scenarios so you actually know what you're getting into. And because we talk, and I'm going to beat it home all month. Again, the ratios can still move, and they can really be game changers because people can come back to you. You can move up. It's just, it's something that I keep beating home because I see it every single year. Ever since Todd Zola put it on the big radar, I see it every year, and it's become such a big thing for me to focus on.
At the beginning of this week, I had 120 points in my my auction league, right? My NFBC Auction Championship League. I currently have 113 points. So in less than a week, in 5 days, I have lost 7
points. In late August.
Yes. And it's because of my ratios. It's because my whip and my ERA, I got beat up. And other people had good starts this week. And all of a sudden, I went down, they went up, and they passed me in those categories. And now I went from having, anywhere from a 10 to a 15-point lead in my league to having a 3-point lead in my league.
Collar tightens, and you're like,
yeah. And
happens.
In my head, I was already figuring out how I was going to spend all this money I was making. And now I've got to get back to grinding and hoping that, guys like Jesse Scholtens don't kill me.
Few things more challenging than the final month grind that I had to win my main event in terms of fantasy baseball. Like the management there, the things you had to think of, the fact that there's just always somebody coming. There was somebody who came from like 5th that ended up being my biggest challenger too. Don't sleep on the person that might be a little bit lower in the standings that you're not even accounting for. Everything matters. Everything matters. I think Scott Jensen talks about how he lost a league by like 1 run or some shit. Like, it all matters.
In 2020, I lost. I went from cashing in my main event to 4th place in my main event because on the last at bat of the season, Eugenio Suarez got a hit and Dusty Wagner jumped over me.
Oh my God!
And I
of
went
all
from
the people too.
I went from a
That son of a bitch.
$1,300 cash to nothing.
Let's see if he listens to this. That son of a bitch, Dusty Wagner. Let's see if he gets.
Oh,
to the end
I
of this
remind
episode.
him this all the time.
I know, but let's see
Right?
if he listens to this exact episode. He will text us and say, "I heard."
I
you
mean, at
talking
this
about
point,
me.
we've been
Love you,
talking for an
Dusty.
hour and 40 minutes.
That's what I'm
So,
saying.
like,
If he listens this long,
yeah, how many people are actually
I'll
listening
be
at this
impressed.
point? If
But hey,
you
he's
are still listening,
he's on the road a bunch. You know, he might be listening.
I bought my tickets yesterday for First Pitch Arizona.
We'll be there,
for
baby.
Danielle and I. You're gonna be there. Jason's gonna be there. Lots of people are gonna be there. I'm gonna try to get on Baseball HQ contributor next week for the podcast, so that way we can chat a bunch more about it. But if you have never been to First Pitch Arizona, now's the time, right? I think
if you can swing it financially, you got to do it. It's a great trip. Yeah. It's so fun.
And the price for the
anybody.
conference goes up as of, I think, September 9th. I want to say. I'm going to double check. Because I was DMing with Brent Hershey from Baseball HQ and accidentally sent him an inappropriate message.
That was meant for Danielle. That's so funny.
I sent him. Funny. I haven't said on Twitter who it is, but for the listeners, yes, I sent Brent Hershey a really inappropriate message I meant to send to my wife. And I've never been more embarrassed. But guess who's going to have the best podcast slot at Sleeper in the Bus? It's going to be Sleeper in the Bus.
We are. Ages ago, I sent an embarrassing text to a friend of mine like that was meant for a girl about how I'll say it. It's so long ago. It's like, my bed still smells like you. And I sent that to my friend and he's like, wait, what? I was like, oh my God. Because their names started with the first two letters the same.
So I will say one that's not quite as graphic for the little ears, but so when Danielle and I started dating, I was roommates with her brother. And he did not want us messing around or dating and stuff like that. And Danielle and I were like best friends before we started dating. And so early on in our relationship, even before we went public with our relationship, I told her I loved her, and I sent a text saying I love you one night and accidentally sent it to her brother because they have the exact same phone number except for one digit difference.
Yeah.
And this was back when you didn't have every number in your phone saved. You knew the numbers.
Yeah.
And apparently it didn't know the number.
Bro, that's so funny.
And he was all like, love you too, buddy. You drinking again?
Yeah.
And I was like, no. I was like, I just, I love you, buddy.
You know, man.
Just wanted you to know. Like, you're a great roommate.
Normalize dudes telling dudes they love them. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just funny that it was the wrong thing. You don't necessarily have to tell your friends that your bed smells like them, especially if it doesn't. That's a little bit more embarrassing, but you don't feel free to tell them you love them.
You don't need to tell people in the industry that you appreciate their butts.
That they have a nice butt. Exactly. If that's consenting and you're with somebody in the industry that you can tell them they have a nice butt, chill as hell.
Yes.
Maybe don't just randomly message them that
I don't think
nice butt.
Brent laughed it off.
For sure. As on the list of people that you could accidentally send that to that are going to not have any sort of negative reaction, Brent's high up there, man.
I'm really glad I didn't accidentally send it to a woman in the industry because that would have been
been the tough
even
part.
Though my friends who are women in the industry,
I think everyone knows.
Like if I sent something to Sarah Sanchez or Shelly, they would have been like, I think you meant to send this to Danielle, and I would be like,
exactly.
But you also don't want to put yourself in that position. So.
Exactly. So just make sure you know who you're sending texts to, folk. I think a lot of us have stories like that. That was so funny that happened to you, and it reminded me of that story with my guy. And I will say that this particular friend that I had sent that to was more of like the macho type, so it was particularly funny to send it to him. Like, he didn't like come back and like homophobic slur me or anything. I'm not trying to besmirch him, but he was just like, bro, what? He's just like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh my God, that was not for you.
Oh,
and it was hilarious.
With Brent, I caught myself prior, and so but I don't know what's worse. Is it like worse to be like him, like say something back, like I don't know if it's next to me, or is it like the panic I had?
The panic
in
stomach
that
drop
moment where I'm trying to figure out how do you unsend a DM, and you can't.
You can't. It's
you can
done.
delete it for yourself, but you can't.
But you can't delete it for them.
Like Elon hasn't fixed that thing on X.
Don't call it that. It's Twitter.
I know.
I know. I'm just teasing you.
As my wife comes by and moons me.
But didn't moon anybody else.
And nice butt, right? I wish I.
That's why you knew. That's why you knew it was nice butt. So we should probably wrap up here before we start getting too far afield. I think we've already gotten far afield. If you listen all the way through, let us know your embarrassing text story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because again, I think a lot of people have those, right? The wrong email, wrong text, wrong.
I don't want to know about you harassing people, but
no.
Embarrassing
but like a funny miss that like was totally laughed off and everything was chill. Yeah, if you are accosting people and being rude to them and harassing them, we're gonna roast the shit out of you and tell you you're a freaking creep. But if you're telling people that they have nice butts that are supposed to go to your wife or significant other, and it goes to a friend or a workmate, that shit's funny. But anyway,
I also have done on a number of occasions, like sent an emoji and hit the wrong one.
Oh, for sure.
Like the middle finger emoji has been used in inappropriate times when people are like, I'm trying to give you the thumbs up, and I fingered the middle finger emoji.
Like that was rude. I thought you liked my idea.
Yeah, no, I've had people like jump into my DMs and stuff and be like, hey, what do you think about this trade? And I go to give them a thumbs up and I give them an FU, and they're like, oh man.
Like, okay, you don't like that deal. Like, no, I liked it.
I'm not gonna jump into your DMs anymore and ask you questions.
That's so funny. I like the idea of you just being like, don't ask me these questions.
I'm pretty sure I was talking to Brian Vogel once about something, and I went to go give him the thumbs up, and I gave him the kissy face emoji. So
that's just a nicer thumbs up. Let's be honest.
It is.
That one doesn't even convey the wrong message. It maybe just conveys an extra aggressive version of it. All right. Well, we got to go. We've been going for almost 2 hours. Are you guys going on Sunday?
I don't think so, just because it's Labor Day weekend, and it's my kid celebrated their 13th birthday, and they're gonna have a party on Saturday.
Birthday, Kennedy.
So I don't know that I want to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning after hanging out with a bunch of 13-year-olds all night to record.
Don't say it like that.
Yeah.
You're gonna be chaperoning.
I'm chaperoning. I'm chaperoning. Yeah.
It'll be great. But yeah, so no on Sunday, and we're TBD on Monday. We might try to get the guest and do Monday. We may move it to Tuesday because it is Labor Day. Fangraphs is dark. We still might do the pod, but if not, it'll be early in the week. There'll still be 2 episodes next week for sure. So we will get that ironed out. Justin, great speaking with you, man. Don't miss send any texts or DMs over the weekend, and I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy.